In the realm of music, artists like A.S. Kullar transcend boundaries, drawing from history, cinema, and personal experiences. From Birmingham to Cambridge, from his father's tabla beats to the Wu Tang Klan.
It was nasty. They was sharp. Everything was like precise, man. The moves, the way they was thinking and all of that.
Kullar's journey is rich and diverse. What drives him? What molds his sound? And how does he see the future of music? We'll explore cinema's impact on his music and his father's influence on his life and career. From his Wu Tang dissertation to collaborating with Benny the Butcher, Kullar delves deep into music. He's also amplified voices like G.S. Nawepindya at Cambridge, bridging cultures and genres. Throughout our conversation, we'll explore Kullar's world, inspirations and aspirations. How does he stay grounded amidst his passions?
My name is the old dirty bastard, you know what I'm saying? We're going to give it to you raw in a few seconds.
The first thing that I guess we want to start with is, who are you, your background, your upbringing, and how does that all kind of evolve into, I guess, what we see today?
Right. I guess people today know me as like a beat maker, producer, whatever. I don't know, my background's always been music. Like everyone, I mean, you're going to ask about it, like my dad always had read it. Like my background's always been there in music, but always primarily as a listener. Like I never really picked up instruments like learning wise, like formally training. And I've always been a listener, and it's kind of just led all the way up until this point where it went from, I will talk about this later. Like, I've always said music comes from that like egotistical place, like where you think, like you listen to music and you think, yeah, I could do that better. And I think the moment it clicked for me, in like 2015, 2016, I started making playlists like where I take albums. I think, nah, it shouldn't have been arranged this way. This should have been the first song.
Oh, wow.
And I used to do that loads, and it was a weird one, especially like during A-level times. Between revising, like in breaks or lunch or whatever, I'd just sit there and be doing that for like no reason. It just helped me like think about music differently.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I was like, okay, I could do that. Like I could make an album more than anyone else. Like, let me do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the ego comes into it as well, because it's like, they can't do what, like, imagine if I was in that studio, I would have made this album 10 times better. I would have made this into a classic. This, that, and the other.
I think the point of the ego is really interesting because I would never have thought about it like that.
Yeah.
And I see your point. But one thing that I wanted to go back on is like you mentioned like no formal training. So are you telling me like you because everyone as a kid is made to learn like tabla or vanjas and
No, of course.
So like as in when it came to that, was it more like was it something that you were kind of made to do? But you weren't really interested. Like how did it work with that?
Complete opposite. Even though my dad is like at the top of like he's at the top, he never put it on us. Like he never was like, all right, you must sit down and you're gonna learn.
Yeah. You're going down the family route, innit?
Exactly. Because he like as a kid, he rejected the family route. His brother was a dholki player, and he never learned. His brother and his family or whatever were like, you're never gonna learn. You're not going down this route. We did this so you could go to uni. You could do this.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
He would get to that and did it himself. So in that same, like an inverse kind of way, it was the same with us, where it was like, almost, I'm not going to force this on you. You do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And that's where it came from, where it was like, I used to go shows with him all the time. And this is another thing. If you give me a dholki or tabla right now, I'm going to play left-handed. I write with my right. I'm right-handed all day in life. And why am I left-handed? Because I learned from just watching. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay.
He's playing with his right, and I'm seeing.
You're seeing the inverse.
Exactly.
Yeah, like
that's how I picked it up. That's all it is. Like just picking it up and playing it like that.
Fascinated at how your brain works, to be fair. But just coming to the point of you mentioning between revising for A-levels, because I'm sure there's plenty of people who fit into that age gap, and they may be listening to that thinking like, well, if he does that, like I can piss around during, right? But just to put it into context, like I'm aware that you went to Cambridge, like as in, so you weren't exactly pissing around, right?
Nah.
Yeah. So do you want to just like explain like?
I have to like, all credit again goes to my family, because again, obviously, Punjabi culture, you get told you have to do medicine, you have to do maths, whatever. And I'm growing up in probably the most like creatively fulfilling environment ever. And that's without, neither of my parents went uni,
Yeah.
That's without any of that. They don't read, do you know what I'm saying? But they gave that environment in an indirect way where we were encouraged just to think laterally instead of like.
Yeah.
So I think that's the route I always took. And it was like, when it came to GCSEs, I was fucking about a lot. I was the worst student from, I'd say, year 8 till year 11. Like in my GCSE mocks in biology, I got a G. You know what I'm saying? And you know what G existed.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where, like, in my GCSE exams, I just about got back into my school. And it was, I say, directly due to I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew deep down what I was good at, and that was like English and history. But you have that societal pressure of, nah, like I need to be.
And also, how you're gonna make money and all that.
Engineering. GCSE. I don't know shit about engineering. You know what I'm saying? So like, what was I actually doing there? And that, as soon as I got back in, like scraped it into school after GCSEs, I was like, okay, I'm gonna fix up and like, what am I good at? And I sat down and realized English, history, RS, done. I'll bang them out. And then A levels was easily the most fun time of my life. In that respect, it was just doing something I wanted to do. So like, Cambridge was a complete fluke. I'll be on like straight complete fluke because it just so happened I liked doing what I was doing.
Yeah.
It didn't really feel like work. I know.
What did you end up studying?
History. I did history.
Nice.
Again, like I tell people, like, your parents let you do that. I'm like, yeah.
I get the same reaction when I tell like people like I did a history degree. They're like, "What the fuck did you do that?"
Exactly, because they think, okay, no job prospects.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're in it, and I mean they're right. But like, at the end of the day, it's what I enjoy.
It's what's fulfilling for you as a human being, isn't it? Yeah. The reason why I brought up Cambridge obviously was because you mentioned how you were making these playlists between your A levels. But secondly, I also heard through the grapevine that your dissertation was on Wu Tang Klan, right? Which itself is mind-blowing because I remember how strict my dissertation tutors were with the subject that I had to pick, and it was it was mission impossible. But A, as a historian, but B, as someone who likes music, what was that on, and what was, I guess, like your overall conclusion like from your study?
So, a bit of background. The way the Cambridge degree works is split into 2 parts, Hannah.
Okay.
You do your first 2 years, then you do your 3rd year. And for my 3rd year, I did a modern American history paper, Hannah. And there was one topic in there called popular culture, right? And it was looking at how mass consumption and those kind of things like blew up basically in the post-war period. Right?
Yeah.
And I thought it's just going to be a standard, like, oh, women will buy more fridges. And
Yeah.
just be standard. The opening article, like, in my reading list was about the Oprah show. And I was like, what is going on? And it was talking about how the Oprah show is linked to a rise in a certain type of like mysticism among like middle-aged women really in America, right?
Okay.
Where they started believing in the religion of Oprah, like all this like freebies that you get. And Christianity that she was pushing kind of thing.
Oh, okay. This is interesting.
It blew my mind. I was like, whoa, like you can write a history paper on this.
Yeah. And you never have seen those angles, innit? Yeah.
I've seen those angles. And the other angle that I was approaching was when we did that civil rights topic, one thing that was like glaringly obvious to me was civil rights histories tend to obviously stop after the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Skip over to the LA riots.
Yep.
Skip over to BLM.
Yep.
And you have these massive gaps in between. And I thought I was being a bit stupid, but I was like, you know what fills that gap? It's hip hop.
Yeah.
Like, if you talk about documenting what was really happening and first-hand witnesses, right? Those were the rappers. You know what I'm saying? So it was in 2 minds that way as well. And I was like, okay, before I even go to my supervisor, I want to do hip hop, but how do I do it?
Yeah.
I sat down, I thought, what is the most important album of all time? And it was like this. It was like Wu Tang. It's Enter 36 Chambers. And I sat down and I thought, why is that? Firstly, on a hip hop flex, on the musical flex, the most influential album ever, like production wise.
Okay.
When it came out, nothing was sounding like that. And the techniques that RZA was using, and this is where like obviously my background kind of was.
Yeah.
I was like, everything he did there, you don't get Kanye, you don't get Just Blaze, you don't get anything like 2000s. And then if you skip over like today, Alchemist, Madlib, whatever, you ask all of them, who are your favorite producer, right? Like within 5 answers, they'll say RZA. I know.
Oh, wow.
Because of everything he was doing on that album. and it doesn't get talked about. It doesn't get like mentioned.
Is there anything in particular that you could like point out just as an example?
Massive one. Can It All Be So Simple? The song on there uses a pitched up soul sample, which no one had done before. Up until that point, obviously the 80s were sampling disco.
Yeah. Puff Daddy's sampling all of like the David Bowie songs and stuff,
exactly
right?
in it. And then like in the 90s, Premier, Pete Rock, Large Professor, all these guys are sampling jazz, and RZA is sampling jazz as well. But he was the first guy to sample soul in that way.
Which is really interesting considering how soul music and hip hop kind of like evolve into one another. But
exactly. That was another angle.
Yeah.
The fluidity of like black genres.
Yeah.
And the way they led into each other. So that was one way I was thinking. And ultimately though, the angle I took from my dissertation was about cross-cultural exchanges, because that album is obviously so influenced by martial arts films and ancient Chinese philosophy, which is how like...
And you can hear it in the albums.
Exactly. And I always thought it was deeper than just, these sword clashing sounds could be like saying, there's something deeper going on.
There's a meaning, or there's like a purpose that is there, isn't it?
Exactly. And it's all in the lyrics. It was all there. Like the way they were connecting, and this is the really interesting part, was the way they were connecting their lives in 90s Staten Island and the philosophies they were growing up with, which is like Nation of Islam and 5% of philosophies there. They connected that to like Taoism and ancient Buddhism and that kind of stuff. And their gateway through to that was cinema. So it had this journey. And they go to these cinemas, these late night, like $1 screenings of the worst films you'd ever seen. Like
bootleg Chinese, the martial arts movies.
Over the top exploitation films,
like this dubbed and Mickey's Mouse not moving in time with the lyrics out.
Exactly. Yeah. And we'd look at that and be like, oh, that's funny, whatever. But because of where they were growing up in and their economic circumstances, what RZA particularly saw was stories about resilience and brotherhood and this, that, and the other.
Defiance against the system, isn't it?
Exactly. And he brings that out onto the album. So I thought, like, this album is way more than just a very important sonically influential album.
It's not just music, isn't it?
It's not just music. It's speaking to something so much deeper. And that was so fun to write. It was.
I'd love to dig my teeth into that, but that would be a whole conversation in its own right. Yeah. One question that I hadn't planned to ask, but I think is quite fitting considering the topic, which is like, so for me personally, and this is a very generalized opinion of like rap and hip hop, and hence why I'm asking it, because I'm sure you'll be able to shed more light. But you kind of go from Wu Tang, you have Nas, and when I mention Nas, I mean it in the same sentence, because there's almost like a narrative to the music. It's not just about like, oh, we're just going to make a beat for the club, we're going to try and tell a story, right? Exactly. And then you've got Tupac, which kind of dabbles in both, and you've got Biggie, which is obviously far more commercial, but some of his early stuff is describing the stuff going on around it, right? And if you fast forward, we've kind of ended up with what people colloquially call mumble rappers.
Yeah.
My question is, as someone who listens to music and is kind of like getting older, and the genre that he grew up with has now evolved into something arguably completely unrecognizable. Yeah, like as in mumbling, like as in the whole point of a rap song was the fact that you could get involved with it, right? And you'd be like, fuck the police, or whatever the case is, yeah? What do you think, or why do you think we've ended up where hip-hop music or rap music is today? Like how is it evolved from being so conscious of its political element? Because even like I was watching, I'm sure you've seen it on Netflix, it's a limited series about
evolution.
There's that one, but there's a recent one that's like women in hip-hop, and it's just looking at like how women, black women in particular, obviously in hip-hop, were instrumental in. So for argument's sake, the person behind the Sugar Hill Gang who made can't remember the name of the song now, but everyone knows it.
As in Grandmaster Flash.
Yes, yeah. So the group who put all of them together to make the first song, I forgot what it's called now, but everyone knows it, was a black woman. Yeah. And then like there's Queen Latifah, there's MC.
Reading about this recently. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw her name on the producer credit.
Yeah. And so all of this music is essentially on the back of black women, although they themselves face a particular challenge in the way rap music can be misogynistic and misogynist and all the rest of it, right? But there still was, to a larger degree, a political element and an element of storytelling in terms of this is the shit we have to deal with. And now we've ended up with mumble rappers, yeah? Why do you think that's happened, and what do you think has helped cause it to go down that path? Because I don't think it was inevitable.
That's such a big question. There's so many reasons that come to my head. I think one thing, if you trace like the evolution of hip hop, again, like you was just suggesting before with soul and stuff, you have to trace it in the overall evolution of black music.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it comes from like rejecting appropriation, right? So the idea of like, if you look at jazz, right, and the way that started out, I'm really bad with my terminology. I can't remember which one refers to which, Hannah. But jazz obviously started out really soft swing, then like kind of almost whatever it is in it. It was really simple.
Yeah.
Understand. Then bebop comes out, Hannah, and Thelonious Monk and these kind of people.
Yeah.
And they said at the time, it's because when we were doing that, the white men were getting the most credit. So we invented a genre that they can't play. You can't play these chords.
No.
Do you get what I'm saying? And when they did start learning how to play it, all right, we're going to do rock now. Hannah?
Yeah.
Oh, and you're going to start doing rock. We're going to go to disco.
Yeah.
You're going to start doing disco. We'll go to soul. We're going to do this. We're going to do hip hop.
Yeah.
And I think with hip hop, it might have been a case of, I'm speculating here, I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
Hip hop and the way that the major labels came in and infiltrated it or whatever, I do believe there's a sense of artists maybe feeling a certain way about maybe addressing certain topics, and the guy that's funding everything, the guy that's actually profiting everything from it, is someone like Leo Cohen or someone like that.
Like that white guy in the NWA. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think they rejected that at the time, and they go into a different direction. And it leads to a point where it's almost bastardized to the point.
Yes.
It leads to something here today. And you have this splintering of subgenres. So obviously you have mumble rap, but then you have like underground New York hip hop, which is my favorite genre of, I always say, like West Side Gun and Benny the Butcher and Conway and that kind of stuff. Splinter off from there, death grips, clipping, all this injury reserve, all these abstract, really like almost glitch hop kind of.
Yeah.
So like, where did all these come from? I think it's just a rejection of the time. Every generation wants to reject
what's come before and make their own thing in it. Yeah, which makes sense.
I think mumble rappers were an instrumental part of that. The other thing is, and this is like, I'll use an example of like Chimkila, right? People say obviously Chimkila double meanings and this and the other, and like.
But that's poetry though.
That's poetry, and you speak into the time.
Yeah. But I guess my point more so is it's not. Chimkila himself isn't doing it. The default of poetry is double meanings, like across the board, isn't it?
Obviously, the hypersexual innuendos and this, that, and the other at a time.
Which is to that cultural reference at the time. Yeah.
At the time where like say Manik or Shinda were still talking about folk tales, huh? They were talking about Dulla Patti and
that shit's old, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Chimkila was like, that shit's washed.
Yeah.
I want to talk about what man's really want to hear.
Yeah. What people actually are talking about. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And and people definitely at the time, like the Karkos and Jajados at the time, were definitely thinking like that.
This is bonkers.
This isn't what folk really is, because folk originated from like Jatas and that kind of stuff, innit? So there was definitely that rejection at the time, but at the same time, we'd look back and say, Chimkila was a product of his time.
Yeah.
I think the mumble rappers at the same time, if we study it from like a third person perspective or whatever, a guy like Kodak Black, who's faced sexual assault charges and he's always talking about drugs and this, that, and the other, he's such an interesting person to analyze, to tell us about the time. What kind of time do we live in? Do you get what I'm saying? If you listen to those, that music, regardless of whether it's lyrical, regardless of whether he's saying anything of substance at all,
there's still a story.
Exactly, and that's why hip hop is completely unique. You can't look at a Demi Lovato song from and be like, oh, what does this tell us about?
Or like an Iggy Azalea song, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even a Kodak Black song will tell you something about the black experience in 2023.
I don't disagree with that. I think some people would argue that, and it's always, I wouldn't say it's a great conspiracy, but there's always this assumption that actually some of these people are encouraged to a particular way because of the image they portray. So a Kodak Black image is very different to, say, a Tupac image or a Wu Tang image, right? And then there's the whole angle of, well, maybe there's a purpose for these characters being in the positions they are, but that is a whole different kettle of fish, right?
I'm referencing my uni work here, really, and but we talk about popular culture, right? There's two meanings to the word popular.
Yeah.
And the first meaning has completely faded from what it used to be. Yeah. Popular used to mean from the people.
Yeah.
From the people or for the people, Now, it's got to a point where popular just means, well, actually, put it this way, it went from the people to for the people. From the people in terms of, it went from documenting what it's about and all of this stuff, and it was grassroots, For the people to the point where, again, I trace this to like major labels and major distribution or whatever, artists now have an expectation to talk to everyone. So anyone can interpret it. That's why they're mumbling. Like, you don't want to hear the word.
Yeah, it doesn't actually matter. It's just the beat for the club. Yeah.
Put it in a Punjabi context, right? From my observation anyway, you can make two types of songs today in the Punjabi market. You either make music for the girls or you make music for the Mandir, the Punjabi Mundir, my age, who are rolling around in their Lundi Jeeps, smoking fame,
Jar to this, jar to that.
Exactly. And going around doing whatever they're doing,
Yeah.
honking at girls.
Yeah.
Those are the two markets that are buying today. And I can guarantee, you go into your Punjabi playlist, you can market, you can everything like that. Sartaj, AP.
What do you think has given you such an analytical ability with music? Because one thing that I've noticed is, as we've been talking, your ability to be like, just accurate as hell. And I think what I really enjoy from this so far is actually you're like, well, hold on, let's just look at what it is for what it is, and then you run with it. What do you think is giving you that ability, or is that just something that you've kind of been like, well, fuck, I just had it, man, and I'm just running with it?
I'd say a combination. Maybe, obviously, I'm using like a historiographical method, really.
Yeah.
And that's come from holding it in at uni or school, whatever. But I think as it pertains to music, the long exposure I've had of the business through dad.
Yeah.
Where I used to go shows all the time. We have singers around. I'm seeing what they're talking about. When I've started like learning Punjabi, well, that's what they're about, I think. Yeah.
Now I know what they're talking about. Yeah.
And see the ins and outs, and that's why it's frustrating when you talk to someone. I used to always have this, is so elitist, when you talk to someone about music and they think a certain thing about a Punjabi singer or a Punjabi song. Oh, if only you knew about this geezer and this, that, and the other.
If you knew about the context and the story, and what's going on.
I think that's where it's come from, where like I've had this really long exposure to the mechanics of the music industry. And ultimately, you could take the Punjabi music industry and apply it to hip-hop, pop.
Yeah.
It's the same. Money's money,
Yeah. So, you mentioned your dad a few times, and a few people are probably wondering, well, who is he, and like, how does he fit into this music industry? Now, obviously, feel free to share whatever you feel comfortable with, but like, I guess for those listening, like, who is your dad? How does he fit into this situation, and why is he important in what you're doing, if that makes sense? Like, how does that connection work?
Yeah, so dad's known as Tubsy, Rupinder Singh Kullar, Tubsy.
I'd only ever known him by Tubsy. So when I realized that A.S. Kullar was like, Kullar must be his second name, I was like, fuck, it makes so much sense.
That was part of the thinking, obviously, of like having that name as well. It's like, it's a nod, but it's not a nod.
Yeah, no one would know unless they know, innit? Yeah.
Accurate. So yeah, my dad's he's known professionally as a dholki player, as a percussionist. He's been in the industry for years. I'd say people primarily know him from Dolla when he was like, I don't know how old he was, 15.
Fucking hell.
So and he was gigging before that as well. So he's gigging from like 11, 12.
And just for your dad's context then, like, you mentioned that they didn't go to university. Were they the first generation to come here, or was it your grandparents that came here?
My grandparents came here.
Yeah.
But all of their other children, so got so many brothers and sisters, but like, it's a big family. They were all born in Punjab.
Okay.
And they were all older than dad by a good 20, 30 years.
Oh, wow.
I was the youngest by a mile.
Wow, okay.
A mile. So that was a big context as well as to how he's grown up, how he has, because he grew up at a time where his brothers and sisters were having kids. So he's the same age as his nephews and nieces.
Yeah, that typical Indian situation. Yeah. I've got cousins who are my dad's age, and I'm like, how does that work? Right?
Exactly. So that's where he grew up, and he grew up in a very desi household.
Yeah.
He was the only one born here, but everyone around him is this.
Yeah.
And again, backstory: my granddad was a dud sarangi player.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
What do you know? What year he was born? Your granddad?
I wouldn't have a scoops. Honestly, I wouldn't have.
But it'd be pre like 1900, like very early 1900s. I was
Only like 1920s probably. Well, I'm like, I don't know.
That's somewhere
there, innit? Yeah. And
And has that been like a family, not tradition, but has that been like, is music in the family, or does it come just?
I don't know if it goes beyond my grandpa.
Okay, so you've not been able to go further yet.
I wish I could be doing it.
No, it's really difficult to find records for people like us. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So I associated with it starting with him.
Yeah.
And he used to play on like All India Radio in
Fucking gone. Yeah. So serious, not just like, it wasn't a hobby, like dude was serious, innit? Yeah.
serious. And he used to perform with like Lit Singh Shonky and that kind of stuff, like obviously like Bonjour.
Yeah.
And the way he got here was off a sponsor, because they were sponsored. They was like Arts Council today.
Yeah.
It was that kind of situation back then.
Mad.
They'd seen like, and he came with the whole jata. They came here, Hannah, and he started in Foundries or whatever. Started in Liverpool, I believe, which is why I'm a Liverpool fan, Hannah. So.
Oh wow. Okay.
I'm picking it up.
There's a reason. Yeah.
But yeah, and at some point, my dad picked up the Dholki. I ain't got a clue how, no idea how.
Just picked it up, just for jokes.
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if it was a case of he again rejected what his dad said. He picked it up one day, but for a lot of people that know, a lot of people that don't know, my dad has. I'm saying it on this platform because it's been like a passion project of me for more people to know, for it to get out there.
Yeah.
That my dad played on massive tune, AS Gambit, Gidya Dirani, Hana. That's his Dholki. And that Dholki, right?
This is insane, because the more you talk, the more I'm like, fuck, like, as in there's blips in the timeline that are going, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nuts.
And that Dholki.
So that's your dad's older brother then, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
And second oldest brother. And that Dholki it's like if you ask a jungle head or a drum and bass head, the amen break, Hannah.
Yep.
That's the foundation of that genre, Hannah. Or you ask a hip hop head, Impeach the Presidents or Skull Snaps or whatever. Those drum breaks are the foundation of that genre. You could play me your playlist right now, 10 songs with a Dholki in it. Every single one of them is that Dholki, that sample. It has been sampled to a innumerable like.
And does it work where he gets royalties or kickbacks? It doesn't work like that in the Punjabi industry.
To this day, bro, there's no system for that. You could sample anything. And it's obviously it's messed up, and in the Western genres or whatever, there's paperwork and everything's very tightly kept, and that's since. I'm really not sure when that really started. It starts probably in the 90s, Hannah.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you said Sugar Hill Gang. Obviously that's just a loop of a disco.
Yeah.
That was a whole set, and that's the foundation of hip hop in terms of you take a song within that's like a disco or a funk song or whatever.
Yeah.
And there used to be like a 10-second section where everything would drop out apart from the drums and maybe a light chord or whatever.
Yeah.
They used to rap on that. So when they release songs, they'd take that part, and that's the song, Hannah. As hip hop became more popular, those labels that owned those records are like, well, you can't do
you can't be doing that shit, yeah.
do that. So they started taking percentages.
So it's more of a global north thing then.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I remember Jay-Z and what's the other guy, Timbaland, were taken to court for sampling Big Pimpin' or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was an Egyptian song.
Exactly.
And nothing happened. They got out, and it was
another one. Rakim and I can't remember the song, but you know that Tora De Shamanagada or whatever it is.
Yep.
That sample.
Yep.
The addictive.
Yep.
Addictive, whatever it is, isn't it? You can't find that anywhere because they couldn't settle a percentage for it. So they took it off all streaming, took it off, well, back then they took it out of distribution because they couldn't.
So it is a global north thing then, isn't it?
Exactly. That's the level, like even as recently, remember Blurred Lines, Robert Vick, and that had like a Marvin Gaye interpolation. That wasn't even a sample, Hannah.
And he got taken to court, didn't he?
Got taken to court, and now Marvin Gaye takes 50% of it, as in his estate takes 50%, or something stupid like that. That doesn't exist in Punjabi music, and it is what it is.
Do you think that's also, like, ignoring the whole global south, global north thing, because I think that obviously works its way into the narrative, and we could get bogged down in that. But do you think that's also an element of, like, not enough Punjab, like, as in, I don't know, like, surely the creators in the Punjabi industry care about their art by default, but then why do you not think a system like that has ever come about? Do you just think people can't be asked?
Yeah, I think it can't be asked. There's a lot of vested interests in it not happening.
Because it would almost stop the growth of the genre.
It bankrupt a lot of people, but it...
Oh, wow.
Like, take that Dholki loop as one example, innit? If that Dholki loop, if the label that owns that record, Hannah, which would be Saregama, I think, whichever Indian label it is, Hannah, if they started claiming every single song that has used that Dholki loop, which they could, you'd have a Punjabi billionaire overnight somewhere. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's mental. That is the level it's at.
Well, hopefully someone listening to puts a system together, innit?
No, hopefully not, because I do a lot of samples. Hopefully not me in it. But like, that's the situation. I think there's a lot of vested interest in not happening. You take a lot of the most popular Punjabi songs over the last 20, 30 years, all sample some of the most popular hip-hop songs. Take Monday at the Bachke, obviously that sample like Busta Rhymes or whatever in it, and the Night Rider theme from there. That only got that was gonna go out one day. 1998 it was fine. 1999 it was fine. 2000 it was fine. 2001 it was fine. 2002 it was fine. 2003 when Jay-Z jumps on it and they clock on. No, we need our percentage for that. We need to take back everything. Blah 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 blah. And it's when that spotlight came on
that thing started.
Exactly. Yeah. But if you listen to like, I'll say this bluntly, if you listen to like any of True School songs from any True School song, actually, really, Tiger Style, my own song.
Tiger Style did a lot of sampling, loads of sampling. Yeah.
Well, even if you look at the garage era, I had this combo with Hardkaran and Manj, and they were like, Hardkaran was like, bro, the 2000s UK garage wasn't a thing, because all it was taking popular garage songs that already were like doing numbers in like the UK market and putting a Punjabi vocal on it.
Yeah.
At least that was
there was that Tu Pata Tera Sataranga that they put over the drum and bass, and it became a huge hit.
Exactly. So our industry is built on like a really bootleg way of doing things, and
do you think some of that is because at that point, so like the drum and bass remix of the Dupatta song, do you think that's also a product of the fact that the people at that time, the cultural context isn't the same? So like, for argument's sake, now you have been born here, you're brought up here, your musicology understanding has evolved here, you bring a completely different mind to the music. So instead of you being like, fuck it, I'm just gonna take this and put it on top of this and here's my product, you're like, actually, let me go from top to bottom.
This is interesting. I had this convo with a guy called Taj Arup, who did off the RAF album, he did Jabdi Lahori.
Oh, okay.
I was talking to him the other day, and we were talking about sampling, and we were like, bro, we're running out of samples. It's getting a bit tricky out here. And we kind of lamented the fact that as producers, we're producing hip hop from scratch kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're really going in, we're not taking an existing hip hop song, and just taking like the main bit of it and adding a Dholki loop onto it. No disrespect to anyone that's done that. That's the foundation of our genre.
Yeah.
But because they did that, we feel an imperative to
create something fresh and new.
And make it from scratch. And that's so much more difficult. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So much more of a harder task. And that's a generational thing. That's where we feel the need to do that. Yeah, we could easily dip in.
Just do the same thing in it.
Onyx song and chuck a Dholki loop on it, and that's it. You've done it.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that. So it goes back to hip hop generation to generation.
It changes.
We reject it.
We were talking about your dad, and we went down that tangent. So just coming back to that. So you were talking about how your Daya was the one who dropped the Dholki beat on that song.
Yeah, good than around a year.
And then from there, what does the evolution hold from that point onwards?
Yeah. So I think at some point, because I mean, look around, you just have instruments lying around. That was the same when my dad was growing up, Hannah. Dholki everywhere, double everywhere, and he just picked up the dholki and just started playing it. Just naturally started learning whatever. And he started going gigs as well, kind of Geordie behind like parents' back, behind his brother's back or whatever, yeah. And realized he had a charm for it, he had a knack for it.
Yeah.
And that's really where it just steadily started off, like playing with like legendary bands from like Anadi Sangeet, Punjabi, and these kind of like the very first bands in the UK. He's playing with those at like 12, 13, and it's a bit mental, innit?
It sounds jokes when you put it into context.
If I saw that on stage, I'd be crying.
You should be like, what's that little goody thing doing, man? Yo, his mom and dad probably looking for him, innit? Yeah.
Exactly. They got the name Tubsy because he was fat as well, so he was like,
I did wonder.
yeah, no more to it. And I think one thing led to another, and by about 15, 16, he's obviously built up relationships with other musicians or whatever, and they're starting a band. They've started this band called Satting, Hannah, and they find a singer, Deepa Dassanj, drops Don't Love, drops that iconic.
It's such a bad boy tune, man.
Yeah, and that's it. His career just went like that, and from there, Satrang to Suffrey Boys, obviously like Bomb the Dumbi and other fine mess, like flipping the albums of went to Malkit after that, Pardesi. Then he took a break from the industry in like 99 probably, somewhere around the time I was born. A couple years, comes back onto the scene, and it took over. He played on stuff like this is stuff that he doesn't even say it. I've got to say it for him.
Yeah.
DJ Sanj Dasaja, that's all him. That's all his percussion. Punjabi MC Mordni, that's all him. So like
Fucking hell.
2000s.
That's him.
Exactly. Everyone associates Don't Love It.
Yeah.
Hannah. It was that stretch as well.
That's mad. That's actually wild.
Yeah. And it got to a point, and this is when like I come into the kind of thing.
Yeah.
By the time I was born, by the time I could even know what was going on anymore, first he was with DCS. So my very first memories of going to like DCS shows, Shin DCS, and like seeing that and being kind of like, whoa, Hannah. But really the very first memories, 2006, I want to say, he's joined Jazzy B's band.
Yeah.
And he's still with them from 06 to 2023, non-stop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I used to go shows almost every day, every week, whatever it was, through that Romeo, Rambo, Maharaja's era, those 3 albums straight from 06 to 2011, yeah? And this is at a time where the live scene's booming, Hannah. This is a time, obviously now he started doing club gigs again, Jazzy B.
Yeah.
It was a time where he was not doing club gigs or like outdoor kind of gigs or whatever. It was just wedding gigs or a minla, Hannah.
Oh, wow.
But this was a time where he was getting booked every day to be able to say it. So I'm there, and those albums have like left
Ingrained in you, innit?
unbelievably. Romeo, Rambo especially, like they're stuck with me kind of thing. And that's really the exposure. That was the exposure I had. And
What did your dad say then with the fact that you've gone to Cambridge and, like, let's be real, most people listening to this are probably like, yeah, he's the archetypal Punjabi Munda, innit? Yeah, he's gone to the best university, done a degree, got a very good grade, come home, and then they're probably asking you, yeah? But what's your dad's opinion, or what's your like family's view of the fact that you've done your degree and you're like, I'm good, I'm done, I'm going down this route? And obviously you dropped a few songs recently. Obviously we'll get on to like the recent one with Benny the Butcher. But like, how has that gone down?
he's unbelievably proud, supported, lax, encouraging. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, unbelievable to know what it is. Okay, so like, more background, right? I stopped listening to Punjabi music probably around 2010, 2011, Hannah. From there until 2016, I'm only listening to hip-hop, only listening to like, really just hip-hop, Hannah. And then obviously you branch out from hip-hop, you start listening to R&B.
Yeah.
That happens, innit? He never he firstly never was like, you listen to this shit? No, you got to listen to flipping, but this,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? He never did that, innit? Let me listen to what I wanted.
My mom calls rap music shang shang.
There you go.
So she'll be like, why are you listening to shang shang for? Me and my brother still catch jokes about it, man. But yeah.
I never had that sort of like rejection of that, Hannah.
Yeah.
And then I got back into it my own way. He doesn't really love the folk era.
Okay.
And that's my kind of That's really my favorite type of music, and Punjabi music. So again, let me listen to folk kind of thing in my own accord.
Wild.
And then I've not had any inkling to produce until COVID. So my second year at uni, I took a year out, needed a year out.
Oh, wow, nice.
Just massively needed a year out.
Because to a lot of people, and especially people who are at university or thinking of going into university, the idea of taking a year out is almost like you just never do it.
Never do it. And
did you do it mainly because it was COVID?
No, this is where like good fortune and really just happened this way, Hannah. That I wanted to take the year out from like November, December, January. I was at my lowest, Hannah. And I was like, yeah, I've got to do it, Hannah. And I've spoke about this before anyway. So I was kind of going through like a very suicidal, depressive state, Hannah. And I remember calling my dad up one day in Feb, probably. I think it was Feb. I was like, I'm going to kill myself. I'm just going to do it. And he was so calm and measured about just talking me down and like, chill out, blah, 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 blah. Drove down the next day or wherever it was, sat down. I burst into, I don't cry as well. Do you know what I'm saying? Before that, the last time I cried was when my baba died.
Yeah.
So it was quite a heavy one for me. And I realized, I need to get out of this place and just take a year out. Taking the year out, a couple of weeks in, COVID gets announced, and chilling. Everyone's at home.
Yeah.
So I'm not missing out on anything, and
it doesn't mess up your studies either, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And part of in that in between period where I knew I was going to take the year out, I was like, what have I always wanted to do that I've never had the chance to do because I've just been of my own accord, to be fair, just in books and just been trying to study or whatever in it. I'm like, I'm gonna make music, Hannah. And my approach was always, if I need to make music, I need to know the foundations. I need to know, especially if I want to make Punjabi music.
Back to basics, and like the building blocks.
Exactly. And you need to know Indian classical music if you want to make Punjabi music to a high level. Ask anyone. That's how it is. Obviously, you can make beats and whatever without that kind of knowledge. But my goal is...
But it wouldn't fit together in the way it would if you had the understanding, right? Yeah.
My goal has always been to, as much as I'm a beat maker now, one day I want to be making scoring films. I want to be making Punjabi folk. I want to be...
You're going to be like Hans Zimmer, innit?
I wish, bro.
Yeah.
I want to be sitting there orchestrating and being like, okay, this play that play this, da, 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 da. And I was like, how do I get to that level?
Yeah.
I want to sit... I don't want to be where I'm at right now. I don't want to be in 30, 40.
It's a stepping stone.
Exactly. And to get to that point, you need the foundation in classical. So when I've told my dad, I thought he was going to be like, fuck off. Take a year.
What are you trying to find it? Yeah.
Back to your studies. He was like, okay, yeah, we can call this geezer, we can sort this out, blah, 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 blah. Within a week, I've started lessons. So that was all down to him.
Fucking sick.
Doing that for me, innit? And and it was naturally from there, like, alongside that, started making beats, started chopping up samples and making these raggo really... I didn't know how to program drums at first, so it just sounded so raw, you know? And
so it's literally like trial by fire then. Like you've learned like to a degree, but then you're like, fuck it, I'm just going to jump in. Let's see what happens.
I'm going to jump in and just make beats because as much as, again, like that knowledge is key for Punjabi music, my first love as a result of all the listening I've done is hip hop.
Yeah.
And to make hip hop, there is no textbook to make hip hop. You just make it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the way I've always learned, again, from like learning from guys like RZA and Madlib or whatever, you take a sample. How do you take that sample and do something creative with it and make a song out of it?
Yeah.
That's all I did for weeks, months. And it kept building up to a point where I was like, oh, actually, I'm making songs.
I've got like an album.
Yeah, no, legit. So, and he was encouraging us that the entire time. And the only thing he said to me was, and because obviously after that year out, I'm into my final year.
Yeah, serious.
And he was like, listen, just...
don't worry about it.
Balance it, yeah, exactly. Like, do what you're doing, but do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that ended up being the best year of my life as well. Like,
nice.
Final year of uni, with everything I had on, like, between, like, Sikh society and beats and football and blah, 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 right? Everything I was doing, yeah, that ended up being the best year of my life, easily.
I'm glad to hear it. Especially in light of obviously how you were feeling prior to that.
That's all. I credit that to Dad. I credit that to music.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so instrumental kind of thing.
Nice.
Instrumental role.
No, it's good to hear. It's always fascinating to have these conversations because parts of the story that you just have no idea start to piece together, and then you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And
Exactly.
And yeah, no, that's awesome. Which then kind of brings us on to the fact that you produced Beyond's EP.
So before that, so obviously I released an EP of September.
Yeah.
We're approaching 1 year now. Globally Entails, I released that in September 2022. When I've gone back to, right before I'd gone back to uni to start the year again or whatever, to do my final year even, True School had caught wind of beats I was posting on Instagram. I was just posting whatever, and I'd liked one of the Check One Records posts. He'd seen, it said Kullar. He'd connected the dots.
Oh, I knew it was your dad because he's in the industry.
Exactly. He's like, Kullar. He's checked the beats. He made a guess. He's probably
Tubsy's kid, isn't it? Yeah.
Within minutes of me liking it, yeah, I've got a call from my dad going, yo, what did you do? True School wants to talk to you. I'm breaking it.
I've had conversations like when my dad he rings you up and he's like, so and so, and I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What have I done? I've never chatted to him really, Hannah, even though I'd been around him or like through the industry or whatever. And the more I go back to listen to those albums, like Word is Born to Represent, you appreciate more this role in that, and like it gets overlooked kind of.
It was a shame that I understand that he made his own move and evolved and whatever, like, and all kudos to him, but it was sad to see the split because of the fact that they would produce such good albums.
Classic album.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, when True School, I text him, we call, and he's like, you've got potential, like your beats sound alright. And everyone that knows True School knows he's very blunt, very scary.
Yeah.
You don't want to be on the wrong side of them kind of thing, or you'd get like chewed out kind of.
Yeah.
But whatever, let's meet up and let's talk, kind of. Label starting. He wants to really expand the label into a more youth-led direction, which is where I fit into it. We talked, and there was never a talk about a contract, never a talk about like an agreement or whatever. It was just, listen, if I send you some vocals, can you do something to it? I'm going into my final year, but I'll give it a shot, Hannah.
Mad.
And within a couple of weeks or whatever, he sends me 3 Harry Potter vocals, and that whole year I've spent making it from September till September, really, because it really didn't get finished until
you were finished at uni.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So crazy experience.
Man,
having vocals for the first time, and I'd kind of lied to get to that point where he thought I had like a whole catalogue of beats ready for vocals, Hannah. Nowhere near that level. Do you know what I'm saying? Like any good beat I'd posted was my only good beat. I was making a, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You were showing the best out of like everything in it. Yeah.
So he'd really had an inflated idea of what I could do. So he's giving me those vocals, and it was a learning experience, taking a vocal and making a beat around it.
Yeah.
Hannah, which isn't the very typical thing to do. In today's industry, your beat maker makes a beat, send it to a writer, or the writer and the singer tend to be the same.
Oh,
nowadays, Hannah, yeah. They write, sing.
And then you put the lyrics on top.
And that's it. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's all it is to like Punjabi music today, Hannah.
Oh, okay, first.
So beat driven.
Yeah.
If you listen, the melodies are following the beat so tightly because of that, Hannah. It's more rap at the end of the day as well, Hannah. There's more rapping than singing, really. I'd say Gurnard as a rapper, I'd say AP is a rapper.
Which is an interesting question, because I remember, like, so I recorded a podcast with Beyond, like, maybe 2 weeks ago, and I haven't got around to editing it. And I purposely picked him and you to do it close to each other, because obviously it's like a music side of things. Yeah. And one thing I asked him, and he had his own opinions of this, and it'd be interesting to get your view, is, so for me, and this is a massive generalization, and I'm sure people listening are probably going to shoot you down for it, but for me, we went from a period where, so we had like the British Punjabi music scene. Yeah, we had like Cray Twins, Punjabi MC, like you keep going.
RDB,
RDB, and Hair, and they're all kind of from Coventry, Leamington, and then you throw Birmingham in, and then you've got like pretty much the whole music scene, right? Dr. Zeus, go like so on and so forth. And that primarily sits within, from my understanding, Bhangra music. Yeah, that kind of fades out, and the recent trend of Punjabi music, and you could probably, a lot of people would argue that Sindhu Musiala starts this, which is kind of mixing rap and hip hop with Punjabi lyrics, right? Now, for me, that's not Bhangra because it doesn't have any of the music that we would connect with Bhangra music within that. But there's still a Punjabi flavor. And so I was asking, was like, surely you can't count this latest genre as being Bhangra music. It's like, as you were saying, like how you get these like little subcultures within the music, right? So surely that's more of surely that's just a complete new
100%
genre in its own.
100.
Yeah.
In my own, like, I'm so OCD. When I add an album to my iTunes or whatever, I'll go, okay, if it says Punjabi even, or just world, I'm like, no, this is Punjabi rap.
Yeah.
Pop. This is post-folk. This is new folk. I don't flipping know, whatever it is, innit? I'm very OCD about that kind of thing, innit? I think, and like you said, it was really, truly down to Sidhu. And
Yeah.
people lament it, and a lot of people like almost like mourn the death of Bhangra, right? It was our own fault as the UK, because we got to a point where we saturated that sound so massively, right?
Everything sounds the same.
We're like that 2010s really, when GT was on the scene, Omen Head.
Yeah.
All these guys were producing GV. These guys were producing
PBN or whatever they were
PBN,
drops.
massive. Like these guys were massive, Hannah. But they kept releasing the same tune after the same tune after the same tune.
I see constantly, there's like not tweets, but I've seen memes. Oh, I think the cameras are started. Hold up.
A few moments later.
I guess going back to that music scene, it's evolved naturally though, because also Sidhu Moosewala, although he's born in Punjab and whatever, he goes over to Canada to make the music, and that obviously, I'm sure he was getting access to all sorts of global music in Punjab, but in Canada, you're default going to be exposed to things that you're not exposed to back home.
Exactly.
And now we've got to a position where I think, and this was kind of my point to Beyonce as well, and he had his own answer to it, which was, surely we've now got to a point where music has become so globalized, it's almost now sharing all of the same beat. It's almost like, so for argument's sake, there's that song by Sidhu Moosewala and, oh God, I can't remember the guy's name. I remember the video though, and it's like he's on a bike and he's bicycling and they're talking about, and he's basically, I only remember the verse because he's like, yeah, they'll talk shit on your name. It happened with me. Like, look where I am now, right?
Classic.
And the whole thing is essentially just a hip hop beat.
Yeah.
So I guess then that leads me to the question of, where do you see yourself in the global landscape of music? And where do you think Punjabi music will go? And where do you want to take that?
The way I've seen it, and this is indirectly, maybe directly due to Sidhu's death, Hannah.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see, I've been saying this for like the last year or two, Hannah, that people are now rejecting that hip hop sound. People are slowly getting tired of the hip hop trap sound. Sidhu comes onto the scene and it's hip hop, Hannah.
Yeah.
AP came onto the scene and he was the first guy doing trap, really. Like, big.
And then bringing in like there's 80 synths into songs and stuff like that.
That's a reaction to that. He was early onto that kind of thing, Hannah. But now, the amount of like Vrinder Barar and I don't know, Aman Tej and Himmat Sandhu and blah blah blah, who are still rinsing the hip hop sound.
Yes.
They're gonna find out very soon, like, people don't like that anymore.
Yeah.
And the current album that just came out is the epitome of a rejection of that. It is so soft. It is so soft is the only word I can use.
Yeah.
It's very chilled. It's very musical, and it's decidedly not hip hop. Is what I'd say that album is. And I think it shows that people are moving into that more R&B kind of landscape.
Yeah.
With Punjabi music, it goes back to what I was saying. Like, there's that two buying publics for Punjabi music. It's the lads and it's the Guriyan, the TikTok girls, Hannah. They're making songs for the TikTok girls now. It's gone to that. It's got girls making music for that. And it's because after Sidhu died and people are still using that sound, people don't want to hear other people do that sound. And
No.
how many, you probably listened to Sidhu more times like in the last year than you ever did when he was
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm the same because I'm rinsing those songs out. I don't want to hear anyone else do that.
No.
Don't touch the hip hop. Do you know what I'm saying?
That was his almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why people are moving into that R&B and that kind of landscape. Me personally, I think there's scope for a nice middle ground, a nice middle way. And I always came into the scene, and this is a combo I had with True School right at the start, where he was like, listen, he said it very bluntly when we first met. He was like, you keep doing the hip hop thing if you want, but I did that 20 years ago. Do you know what I'm saying? What do you want to do? and he was like, just make your own sound, Hannah. So a lot of the time, that whole year was about curating my own sound and having something where I could say,
This is mine.
that's mine.
Yeah.
And it was about taking the ideas you've got, however abstract and like nonsensical they are, and actually making them into beats and music or whatever. And I think the middle ground for me has always been a very soulful hip hop sound. And I'm in like, that is me. If people meet me, they're like, they're so relaxed.
You're literally creating music that you feel. And when I say feel, there's something in here that goes, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's why I really struggle making aggressive music.
But it's not an intellectual process then for you, is it?
Nah.
No.
I've got this set up here, Hannah, but more time I'm making music anyway. Like,
Yeah.
sofa, and I'm just like, okay, cool. I've just got an idea, blah, 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 blah. It could be anything. And I really think the moment you intellectualize it, or the moment you make it into a process or a formula, whatever, is what leads to
This commercialization. Yeah.
Whereas like in the 2000s, 2010s, they kept using the same percussion breaks, the same synth leads, the duh. I'm like, get out of it, man. Stop using that. Like, you were the Just Rain Kabutri song.
Yeah.
A parody song. That was because we'd rinsed that sound so much. That was the end of that era, decidedly then. Bubblicious, that Goody Red Challenger, is a satire of that as well. Do you know what I'm saying? You don't hear Doll songs anymore.
No.
Do you know what I'm saying? That was the first Doll song since that era, bro.
That's
Really
mine.
in it.
That puts it into context, really.
You know what I'm saying? Exactly. So that's how you get to that point where you're making a process, you almost oversaturate.
Yeah. You just use it so much. It's pointless.
Exactly. So the more free-flowing the process is, the less deadlines I have, the less whatever I have external influences, the better the music, bro. 100%.
No, definitely. There was one question so in order to prepare for these podcasts, I have to do some level of research, right?
Yeah.
And normally when it comes to people like yourself or beyond, I'll normally ask people who I know of you, if that makes sense, right? And one question that Arjun ensured that I have to ask you was, you brought GS Nawepindya to Cambridge to do a talk, right?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, I want to know, how did that come about? And then secondly, how did that go down as a talk just in Cambridge?
I was vice president, turning president of the Sixth Society at this time.
Oh, pardon, man.
Vice president. And
On the uncles listening to this are like, good boy.
that was the Punting Monad. That was my whole title back then. But yeah, I had like a whole desire, like, again, music's me in it. And I said, one thing we're going to ensure is music's platformed more prominently in these spaces. We're in Cambridge, you know what I'm saying? Like,
the whitest place in the world.
let's get Punjabi music.
Yeah.
So that was my whole, and everyone agreed. We were all on the same page with that. And we had a conference on, it was going to just be the arts. So we thought, okay, we'll get painters down, we'll get maybe videographers, poets, blah, blah, blah. But people were just unavailable. And we realized the shortlist we had was just music. So it became a music conference.
Nice.
And we had 4 people down. We had Trug, the producer. We had Monica Kaur, the singer. Ravi Raj, he went to uni locally, but he had an extensive background as a musician.
Oh, nice.
As a Dilruba player. And Gopal was one of them. And that came about because I was just thinking in my head, okay, who's representing Sikhi and music in a different context to anyone else right now? And he's the only dharmic writer that people really think of, at least in the UK.
Yeah, no, fair.
So, and at this point, he didn't know my background, like in terms of my dad or whatever. So he goes way back on my dad. So I didn't really tell him. I was like, I'm going to do this myself, and I'll get him myself, whatever. So, yeah, I reached out to him and never met him before, never really talked to him before. And he was more than happy to get involved, kind of. And yeah, he gave a talk on dharmic music, basically. I was like, listen, we've got someone that's doing really Kirtan kind of thing. We've got a producer. We've got someone that's a musician.
I guess he sits in the middle, isn't
Yeah, talk about Nakari, talk about writing in this landscape, and talk about how Sikhi really influences that.
And surely there's a difficulty in writing dharmic songs because there's certain kind of lines you can't, there's boundaries you can't quite play with, right?
Of course. And he's someone that, like, the one thing I really do give him credit for is that he makes sicky and sick topics, very relevant to our generation. And you can hear it, and you can hear the sakya, and you can hear like the stories what he's talking about, but the universal stories are also getting picked up as well, and the stuff you can apply to your everyday life. And also the great thing about his albums and EPs that he's put out, he has a good balance of like the emotional, like
it's almost like a complete emotional landscape, isn't it? It's not just like sad or happy or this.
He's covered all ground, so I was more than happy to have him there, and he smashed it. Really smashed it.
Nice. Which then brings me on to the last couple of questions. The penultimate question is obviously, and to be fair, I think when I saw this is what kind of made me go, so I've followed you on Twitter for quite a while, and I've seen you post your music, and I've listened to bits and bobs. I have to admit, I'm not like a massive music head. Like, I'm more of someone who listens to everything and anything, and I have an appreciation for music. But someone asked me to explain anything, and I have no fucking clue, right? Like, I have no idea, and I can just about play the tabla. And so I've listened to some of your music, and I've been like, yo, this is sick. And same thing with Beyond when we were talking, which is like, the platform that I am building is all good and well for myself, but I'm almost looking at other people and being like, well, fuck, man, that guy's got potential, that guy's got potential, that guy's got potential, or that woman. Let me have a go and have a conversation with them. And then when I saw you drop the EP, I believe, with Benny the Butcher, I went, all right.
Single with Benny the Butcher.
Single, sorry. Yeah. I went, fuck, he's not messing around. Yeah. Because actually, I think there's also, everyone likes to say they're doing something or another. Very few people actually put in the work, and very few people are really consistent with it. Because you see, like even with YouTube, man, it's fucking missions. And then I'm not creating anything fresh or original. And then I'm sat there going, Jesus, this dude's pulling beats out of God knows where. Yeah. So I guess, how did that single come about? And what was the experience like? Because it sounds, I would assume, like it would have been a lot of fun to collaborate with someone who, A, you've spoken about already, but B, I guess to some degree, you would already have an appreciation or respect for whatever the wording is.
So, yeah, that thing about consistency, since I dropped my first EP, I've always had a mindset of, I'm going to keep dropping.
Yeah.
To the point where it's like, I'm throwing out songs, it has to be very carefully consistent to the point where no one thinks I'm just like, I'm saying. So that's always been in my mindset. So EP in September, then November I released a single, then February I released a single, then April I released a single. And then it gets to Beyond's EP. I've done an EP for Beyond, and that was my first hip hop.
Yeah.
And that thinking was like, I'm influenced a lot by Kanye and Kendrick, like primarily. Those are my gateways kind of thing into hip hop. And the thing I really appreciate them for, as Geminis, is that they reject the audience consistently. Album. You don't know what you're going to expect, and they'll punch you in the face and give you something you didn't know you wanted. First, you hate it. To Pimp a Butterfly, people hated it when it dropped. Jesus, people hated it. And then eventually you just recognize it.
It's the best album ever, isn't it? Yeah.
Unreal. And I've always loved that sort of mindset about making music.
So you don't want to fall into a pattern, is what you're always saying. You're like, you want to create music that's unique every time.
But not even as consciously as that. It's just spontaneous, like whatever I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I'm going to put out.
You're not being molded by externalities. You're like, whatever flows.
Exactly. It's not like I listen to, say, like People's Court or Bulletproof from my EP. I thought, okay, those work. I'm going to release another one of those.
Yes.
I hate that thinking. Whereas if you take, they're not going to hear this, hopefully, Jordan Sundell in it. Like Jordan Sundell, like his producer, Mercy, right? They released one song 2 years ago that worked, that freestyle one or whatever it was called. They released 3 songs since then that sound exactly the same, bro.
I see.
Like, what is, that's not.
Which is that same oversaturation pattern we've talking about.
Exactly. And it's not, that's not music, man.
No.
Like, that's not what music's about. That's not art. That's not creative. That's nothing.
That's a commercialization, isn't it?
That's commercialization. That's pandering to the algorithms kind of thing.
Yeah, completely.
My thinking has always been like, I don't want to do that, because then I'm not having any joy out of it.
Yeah.
Happy making beats. So that's where the Beyond EP came from, where like people expected me to do more Punjabi and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, now it's a hip hop EP.
Yeah.
It's rapping in English. And it's all samples, and it's all soul samples and jazz samples and this, that, and the other. No one expected it. So when it came to this Benny one, it was a bit random the way it came out. I'm in the car with my dad, Hannah, and he gets a call from like these American dons that he's been tight with over years and years. I'll tell you straight, just wafflers and a proper like chat the most shit, Hannah. And I hate them really. Like, well and truly, I'll tell you straight, I don't like them, innit?
Fairs.
But yeah, they were suggesting to him, oh yeah, we got this Benny the cooker, and they didn't know what his name was in it.
Oh, wow.
And they're laughing in it. Two guys on the phone, dad on the phone, they're creasing to themselves, not knowing who this guy is in it. And the whole idea was, so this guy called Kells, that's on the song, kinda, he bought the Benny verse, the Benny feature. Oh, he had a whole song already made. He sold it to these American lads, who they turned around and said, okay, you've got that song, let's do a little global remix. You know how Americans are in it, like they think weird, wacky stuff like that.
Because for them, the world is America, isn't it?
Exactly. And their connect was Dad, and they were trying to get Dad to give it to Punjabi MC. They were like, we've got this song, can you pass it to Punjabi MC to do a little remix, little Bhangra remix? And I'm in the car.
Oh, wow.
I'll connect to the dots. I'm like, still on my Benny the Butcher, bro. I told Dad, cut the phone now, and just end the call, yeah? He's ended the call. I'm like, Dad, give me that song. I never do that. I never pull that card with Dad, just saying, like, people ask me, like, why'd you work with these singers, this, that, this, I do that. I could, if I wanted to be a proper Nepo baby, like,
Yeah. You could be like, Dad, hook it up, innit? Yeah.
Like him with Sundu show the other week, let me do that.
Yeah.
I haven't done that, but when I heard Benny's name,
You want it?
yeah, and like, for wider context, I'll try and be as like vague as possible in it. Something that fell through a week or two before this, where there was an opportunity for me to go to America, produce on something that would have potentially featured guys like Benny, Conway, blah, 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 blah.
Mad.
It fell through for whatever reason, and it is what it is. Do you know what I'm saying? I was like,
Things happen.
At the time, I was very angry.
Yeah.
Very, very angry, And so when this call happened, I'm taking it as hooking kind of thing.
Yeah.
1 second. Told him to call. Give me the beat. Give me the song. I'll reproduce it. Do you know what I'm saying? That day, they've sent the song over, and I was at work at the time. I'm hearing the song, and I've heard the song the entire time at work. I'm like, it's beats not it, but the verses are really, really good. I wouldn't do it if the Benny verse is fine. It was the second verse, the Kells verse, which I thought was very, very good as well. I wouldn't do it if it was just the Benny one. This whole song,
The whole thing was good, yeah.
So I was like, okay, it's cool. I've heard it like 15, 20 times at work. Got home, and I'm like dying to, it was here. For once, the laptop was actually here. I've rushed over, I'm like, I'm making this beat now, innit? And I already had a skeletal idea of what the beat was going to sound like. I already had a very skeletal beat that would fit on it. Within 15 minutes, the song was done, bro. Like, that's like that. And I can't describe how it happened. I'm here I'm listening to it. Bro, it works. And all those Punjabi samples I've thrown in, all those other samples which I can't say what they are, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that beat is like my baby kind of thing, innit? I was so happy when it clicked like that. I thought, yeah, this is done. And yeah, and it got to a point where I've never been like that with any of my songs before. I was happy not releasing it kind of thing, because I was like, I love this song so much. I said it to my missus as well, innit? And she doesn't like anything I make, really, no, well and truly. She's like, yo, this is crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I know it's crazy. So I'm just chilling. I'm like, yeah, it's done, innit? Because there was the Americans involved, they wanted to release it. So I'm like, okay, Kika, you can release it if you want. Basically, there's one song where I've had no expectations and no nerves about releasing, because I was so happy with it.
With the quality that you produced, yeah.
I never understood when producers said that before. This is the first time I understood it.
But it's a feeling rather than an intellect, like rather than thinking, isn't it? You're like,
Exactly.
I'm good.
I was like, and this is something I learned from Alchemist. He said this once in an interview. Someone asked him, like, when do you know when a beat's finished? And he goes, when I feel something. I was like, that's crazy, because that's how it should be. It's not like, oh, okay, yeah, this beat's all right, but it's missing an 808, and you keep adding and adding. Take a minute, listen to it. Do you feel something? And that was the moment where it's like, yeah, done. I feel it. So, and that's my favorite song to date, easily. And another context behind it as well is that even though those American guys were involved in terms of hooking it up or whatever, I'd say that's my first genuinely independent release as well.
Yeah.
Because I've put it out myself, Hannah. They didn't help with any of the distribution or promotion, or I sorted the mix master myself with Matt.
Oh, line.
I sorted the artwork out myself with Sunny, and like it's an in-house thing.
And it comes together. Yeah, exactly.
People ask me like, why did you collab with those guys on your post instead of trying to collab with Benny or the rapper? I'm like, bro, because this is my team.
Yeah.
We did this in-house kind of,
Yeah.
and the numbers and whatever that came out of it, it's the first taste of what I can say is my listenership.
Yeah.
Everything else before this, and I can see in the analytics wherever, I've never had a UK majority on any of my songs. All my songs have always been mostly the Canada or India.
In Moses.
There's the first one where it's in UK number 1. I was like, yeah,
I'm happy in it. Yeah.
it's actually, and it's the very first time, and this messed me up properly. I'm at the Pusha T show in Birmingham, Hannah, and loving it. I'm with my boy, whatever. I've come out, and he's way behind, so I'm waiting outside. It's O2 Academy. This woman's coming round, and she's darting for me. She's coming towards me. I'm like, what's going on here? She goes, I just had to say I'm such a big fan. Like, I've been into it, I loved it. Da. I'm like,
Holy fuck.
and then they've gone. And in this whole year that I've been releasing music, that's the first time that's ever happened. Do you get what I'm saying? So it messed me up, and it was like a really good validation of like, this is the approach.
Yeah. And taking more. It's mind blowing when that shit happens, don't it?
It's unreal.
Yeah.
It properly messed me up.
It humbles the fuck out of you, though.
Yeah. I was speechless.
Yeah.
For the next 2 days, I couldn't.
It's just weird, isn't it? Yeah. Like, it's great, as in, like, I'm not taking away from it, but as in, I've had similar incidents. Like, I walked into a corner shop once, and the guy walking out just looked like, fucking stared at me. Like, I thought it was about to be a fight. He's like, are you rambling? And in my head, I'm like, do I say yes or no? And I was like, yeah. And as soon as I said yeah, I clenched, because I was like, I think he's going to try and, I think something's about to happen. Love your work, man. I was like, thanks. It's fucking wild. Mad humbling though. And I can imagine, especially in that type of context, you're just like, fuck, like, really, like how far that reaches and goes, and the impact it has on people. Which leads me to my last question, which is, one thing I've picked up on is that you are incredibly busy doing multiple projects almost at the same time. Like, you were at university doing this album kind of in the background, you left, you're working, you're doing your kind of thing on the side, you're making music. I guess there's 2 questions. First of all, have you always been like that? And the second one is, how are you able to keep your fingers in so many pies?
Yeah.
But the quality. So what I mean is, a lot of people have shitloads of quantity, and sometimes the quality is bollocks, right? But it seems as though you've got fingers in numerous pies, and the level at which you release or produce music or whatever you're working on is at a very particular level. And to be fair, most people listening to this are like, well, are you surprised he's gone to Cambridge, right? But putting that aside, how is that a discipline that you've kind of honed over time? Is that just something natural? And then secondly, where do you see your future? Like, in, I don't know, let's say short-term plan was 5 years. Where would you like to be in 5 years? I know that's a hell of a lot, but just kind of packing it all together.
So the first thing of like, is this how I've always been or whatever?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'd say I'm someone that enjoys being busy. Like, that's my spot. Is for some reason, whatever it is, and it has to be a good busy.
Yeah.
These things I enjoy.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy work right now. So work is, I don't even count work. Like, the second I come home from 5 till 12 or sometimes 5 till 3 in it. Like,
Yeah.
that's how it gets, you know? Producing or watching it. Like, I take watching a film as like as a creative exercise, you know? All of these different things that I do is because I enjoy doing it. Do you get what I'm saying? So
It's not actually a task for you, is it?
it's not a task.
No.
And I've always been like that, I guess, in that way. Again, a lot of it comes down to seeing my dad, and this is someone that's always worked full time when he didn't need to.
Yeah.
At the same time, gigging sometimes every day, sometimes every week, whatever it is, sometimes however many times a day, kind of. On top of that, live recording, blah, 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 blah. And he's someone that, hopefully the DVLA doesn't hear this, like when I'm in the car with him sometimes, he's falling asleep at the wheel because he's that knackered and that shattered from like this content.
Everything. Yeah.
I've always like wondered, why did you not quit work? Why did you not do it? Whatever. It's because the moment he quits work, that becomes work. All those extra things become work.
Yes.
And
yes.
they become,
Good point.
it becomes labor, huh?
Yeah, rather than the passion project.
Exactly. Right now, he loves that. He loves gigging with like the biggest artists in the world. He did Diljit the other year, last year, O2 Arena Diljit, bro. Last week he did Coventry Midnight, bro. Like, do you know what I'm saying? This is the level is at. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, he'll go to this, that, everything.
That's fucking joke.
He loves it.
That's joke.
He loves it. Do you get what I'm saying? And that comes from, and I think I do.
You have that passion.
I take a lot of influence from that, definitely. In terms of the quality, people decide that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, people decide that. I just put out whatever I think sounds good. And I've been, I think, fortunate enough to date where my ears are working and I have people around me whose ears are working. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those things up and be like, yo, does this work? Does this, please tell me if this sounds shit, Anna.
Yes.
That's so important to like.
And you're open to that criticism as well, which I assume is very helpful in what you're doing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
At first, it's like, crap, man.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, then let me go back.
Most people like, yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, I have to credit like a lot of people around me for that.
Like shoulders of giants, standing on the.
Yeah, basically, 100%. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as the future goes.
So let's say, if you, I asked this question to Beyond as well, and I did it in 2 parts. And he first was like, well, actually, I can't answer it because I don't know what's going to happen, which I understand. But let's say you had a magic wand and you could go, in 5 years' time, this is exactly the life I want.
Yeah.
What would you want your life? Where would you envision yourself going in 5 years? Because I think with you just listening to, before even having this conversation, the amount, and I think True School is completely on the fucking mark with this, which is your potential is insane. Yeah. And I have no idea, if I'm quite honest with you, right? I have no insider knowledge or idea about how music works. Yeah. And equally, I said this to Beyond, and I was like, bro, you've definitely got legs, like, and you can fucking run. And I think the same thing with you, but I'm always interested, especially because I'm now getting a little bit older than perhaps you and Beyond are, right? Is where do you see what you're doing going? Because I think one thing that I've also picked up with you is your ability is not honed in on one, like, it's not just producing, it's not just this, it's not just that. And even when you were talking about kind of being like a Hans Zimmer type character, that is like the potential you have is massive, just because there is, I can even look at like YouTube, people making millions of just making sure the music in the YouTube videos right or whatever, yeah? So in an ideal world, what would you want? Like, as in, what does your heart tell you? Like, actually, I'd love to do X, Y. Like, as in, if there was no kind of capitalist restriction, there was no family, whatever it is, where would you want to go?
I'd say this is probably like my biggest strength and maybe my biggest flaw, right? I want to do everything, bro. Yes, great. And I don't know what it is. I think I'm very fortunate, again, like the upbringing I've had and where I've been and what I've done. Whereas I'm interested in so many different things. Like, I love writing, I love watching films, I love making films, I love making music, I love listening to music, blah, blah, blah. I love drawing, do you get what I'm saying? I appreciate art, do you get what I'm saying? And all those different, like, creative avenues, whatever, it's stuff I just want to...
Just immerse yourself in.
I just want to be in that
my
life. And I'm lucky as well, like, 23, I guess, isn't old, isn't...
Mate, you just started, honestly.
Yeah, and like, there's obviously producers younger than me coming out.
Yeah.
They're doing the thing, they're killing it, whatever. And I just see my place in that, sort of diverging maybe, and going different places. In like, I don't know, that Hans Zimmer, like, I use Chanji the Hujja as an example. Yeah. Like, the music director of Punjab, right? That's somewhere I want to be. I want to be a film director. Like, that's something I've always had a passion in. Don't know where to start, but like, I want to.
But you'll figure a way out.
You have to, and I've always somehow figured a way out, and I don't know what it is. It's like a strong guiding hand in my life, I think. Siki has been an instrumental part in that. My papa, who's not with us, has been an instrumental part in that. My daya, he's not with us, has been an instrumental part in that. A lot of these guiding hands, for some reason, I feel in my life, and it's going with the flow, bro.
Yeah, you're just accepting as it comes, innit?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I didn't speak about this before, because people assume when I said, like, at uni I was going through something, they assume it's to do with studies or whatever.
Yeah.
I had a moment where I felt like I wasn't in control of what was happening. Me personally, everyone says, oh man, I definitely did work for it, blah, blah, blah. I did not work to get into Cambridge. I didn't work for a lot of things that led up to that point, and it felt like a lot of things were happening to me, and I had no control.
Just to put you in that position.
Yeah, and I didn't understand it. I broke down over it because I was like, it's almost like I don't have any free will kind of thing to do what I want, and I hate it, blah, 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 blah. And in some way, suicide was almost like a agency thing, like I get my agency back by doing that, you know? And I realized Dusiki is that hukum is like the most liberating thing. It's like Maharaj is taking that off you, the stress of like, oh, what am I going to do? What's going to happen? Don't worry. What's going to happen is going to happen. You worry about how you're going to navigate in those situations, you see what I'm saying? And that's where I'm at with my life right now. Where
And just let go.
exactly like, okay, like I told you before, that project with that
That didn't go through.
didn't go through. I could be vexed till this day.
Yeah.
That song came onto my laps, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's how that, like, there's no plan, like, in terms of, all right, 5 years from now, I need to be making this kind of classic body.
You're just going with it.
I'm just going with it. And I know for a fact those things are going to happen.
Yeah,
I know for
they
a
are.
fact I'm going to produce a film one day. I know
No, they
for
will.
a fact I'm going to score a film one day and this, that, the other. And it's like, it's going to happen.
Accept what it
It could happen.
Yeah.
So,
No, you're completely on the mark. Just, I think, I have to obviously like respect and appreciate the fact that you've been so open, and just to reciprocate that. Similar situation happened with our family. My older brother, my dad, myself got attacked by 30 men in a room probably half this size. My sister-in-law at the time was 6 months pregnant with my older brother's first child. They smashed his skull, but this much of his skull comes off. I could see into his brain at the time. They slashed my dad's face open. They gave me a black eye. And I got to admit, we kicked the shit out of him because obviously we got out, right? Hospital, doctor says, had it been any closer, your older brother would have at best had brain damage and at worst be dead. Yeah. And it's been about just under 10, I think it's been like 8 or 9 years since this happened. And I was vexed, as you would imagine, right? And then coming back to your point of like the whole hukum thing, which is shit happens, man. And you have to flow with it. Because fundamentally, from an intellectual standpoint, it is a mind fuck to understand you have no control. But ultimately, that is the hukum, in it. Like, you just, like, you did nothing to be born. You did nothing to have this life. You did nothing to have these parents, so on and so forth. But to come to that understanding without having to go through something traumatic is a blessing in its own right.
100%.
But the experience of it is a different lesson than intellectualizing it, right? Because you feel it rather than know it, if that makes sense.
And that's it's so hard to explain
Yeah.
to people. You sit there and you try and explain it, and I think, what the hell are you on about? But
Yeah.
gets it at some point in their life, someone will understand that. It's just
It's just part and parcel of it.
exactly part of life, you know?
Definitely.
So yes, that's the ethos I've got at this present moment.
I like it. It's good. I think with everything that I've learned about you during this conversation, and I think with that as kind of your fundamental basic, honestly, the ability that you have to progress and to run is going to be wild. And I'd like to see, and I said this to Beyond, in 5 years' time, we'll do another podcast, and we'll do a comparison of kind of how where you are now and kind of the conversation we had then. Which leads me to the last question. I think I've covered everything that I had planned. I just want to double check. Is there anything that you think is worth mentioning or anything that you want to kind of include just before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say, like, thank you.
Oh, no, it's so good.
See, again, going back to that ego point at the start, like, any artist will relate to this. We're so passionate about what we do.
Yeah.
We just want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I love talking about it.
Yeah. Likewise, hence why, innit?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, thank you for the platform, innit?
No.
Yeah.
No, not a problem. Thanks for saying yes, and thanks for inviting me over, man. It was a lot of fun. So no, thank you for that, man. Awesome. Sick. Thank you.
All right.
And that's the end of another intriguing podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed creating this podcast. If you're passionate about the work I'm doing and want to support it, consider becoming a paid YouTube member to unlock some cool features or join our Patreon community. You can find the links in the description below. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll hopefully see you in the next video. Bye.